Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo, what up, Bolt fam? It's the Director. Chargers fans, we got the good old throwbacks on today in lucky number 17, and for good reason. We're talking about my boy, Bolo Tie Philip Rivers, who, as you can see from the graphic, is now eligible to join the class of 2026 in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now, this is a topic I've seen roaming around social media, I would say maybe the last week or so. And for a lot of, general NFL fans, it is a conversation that carries legitimate debate, right? As a Chargers fan, of course, right? I of course, would love to see number 17 in the Hall, but it's also a little bit hard to talk about. Unbiased anyway, right? Because in my mind, as a diehard Chargers fan, a diehard fan of Philip Rivers in particular, of course I'm going to think as number 17 as worthy of the Hall. But sometimes this conversation can bug me a little bit too, right? And what bugs me is that it feels that sometimes some people outside the Chargers community even, they use this debate to try and, discredit Rivers' career in some ways, which is a bunch of bull if you ask me, right? Rivers is one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. But when it comes to the Hall, it can get extremely political at times, right? And even though I believe there's no doubt that he belongs there, I kind of wanted to pull together as much evidence as I could to see if he realistically has a shot at getting in the near future as soon as 2026. So it should be a very interesting one today, guys, and hopefully one that brings a little bit more information to the table and whether or not Philip Rivers, in comparison to, other Hall of Famers, especially recent Hall of Famers, has a good shot at getting in. Before we do get started, guys, question in the comments like we always do. Let's do a fun one today, right? What is your favorite or even more memorable moment for Philip Rivers? I'll give you guys my answer near the bottom of the show as well. Before we do kick off, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this one. Lights, camera, action. I swear I'll get it put in by the next video. Is my man, number 17, Philip Rivers, a future Hall of Famer? I'm hoping this topic isn't too sensitive for some people. It has been for me at times, just looking on social media. Sometimes I, question whether or not to engage because I truly believe so, but I also do find a lot of pushback when it comes to the topic itself. So let's kind of dive right into it and some of the, I would say, contributing factors as to whether or not Philip Rivers does make it into the Hall, starting with the class of 2004. This actually is one of the first things I think about when thinking about Philip Rivers making the Hall, because of this impressive trio that were all drafted in the same year. Eli Manning, Big Ben Roethlisberger, then, of course, Philip Rivers. Now, of course, we're going to start here with Eli Manning, as I know a lot of Chargers fans have no love for this dude, right? If you guys don't know, look it up. He did the Chargers dirty in this season. In the end, it was for the best, right? It was part of getting Rivers on the roster, who ended up giving us some of the most amazing experiences as San Diego Chargers fans at the time. But man, did that rub me the wrong way. And even though Eli rubs me the wrong way and rubs a lot of fans the wrong way, it's hard not to admit that this guy was kind of a postseason beast, right? Notoriously the slayer of the undefeated 2007 Patriots in Super Bowl 42. That was one that I think a lot of us may have been Giants fans for just 24 hours, right? And it definitely was something that is stamped on Eli Manning's career as a highlight. He also does carry with him 4 Pro Bowls, 2 Super Bowl MVPs, which in my opinion, makes me feel he's definitely going to be a strong contender for the Hall of Fame. Then there on the left, we do have Big Ben Roethlisberger, who, in my opinion, again, his career definitely gives him maybe the best shot among the 3 to making the Hall of Fame, right? And Big Ben, you know, back in his heyday, was one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And with that came a lot of success for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers were always a dominant team under Big Ben Roethlisberger, winning 2 Super Bowls with him under center. I feel like I have the stat written down right here, actually. 11 of his 18 seasons saw 11 or more wins with Big Ben under center, right? And this, along with 6 Pro Bowls, he had a Rookie of the Year on offense award as well, and other impressive stats and awards too. All of this, at least to me, makes him a strong name to consider when looking at the upcoming Hall of Fame class. And I think in the end, in my opinion, if I were to predict things, if one of these guys get in, I think it's a more sure bet that Big Ben Roethlisberger makes it into the Hall. And then finally on the right, we do have number 17, the beloved Philip Rivers, who to a lot of people, in my opinion, does get overlooked in a lot of ways, which is absolutely insane to me, right? Because Philip Rivers didn't only keep up with his classmates. Very impressive trio coming out of the 04 class. He didn't just keep up with them, but he stood out in several different aspects, even above them as well, right? So Philip Rivers, I feel like, I don't know. The biggest reason I feel I'm bringing up Big Ben and Eli Manning is because to many people out there, they are no questioned future Hall of Famers, right? And I just kind of want to know why Rivers shouldn't be held in the same regard. His career was also very, very impressive. I would say, especially when you look at him individually as a player, right? So that's kind of segue into the next topic, stats despite the lack of a ring. And that's probably the biggest thing that we're going to hit on, is the lack of the ring here in a second. So first off with stats, they don't always define how great a player is, right? There's many seasons where stats really don't paint the whole picture for a lot of players in the NFL. But in Rivers' case, in my opinion at least, I do feel like it does speak volumes. At his peak, Philip Rivers was one of the league's most lethal passers, right? You guys remember, right? Rivers to Gates touchdown every single Sunday. It was super exciting to turn on the old boob tube and check out what Philip Rivers was doing versus any given opponent. This guy was not afraid to throw the football, and he was very, very good at it. It made for extremely entertaining football through the era of Philip Rivers, and honestly, it's some of the best years I can remember as a Chargers fan, even though the win column should tell me that I should have been a very sad Chargers fan, and that did come along with it. But for the most part, my happy memories as a Chargers fan are intertwined with the name of Philip Rivers. And he wasn't only the league's most lethal passer for a few years, it wasn't a blip on his resume. This lasted for like a decade, pretty much. Rivers only saw 2 seasons in which he didn't throw for at least 4,000 yards, and they were his first 2 in the league, right? His rookie season and his follow-up. And I think at that point, the team was really running through LaDainian Tomlinson. We were a run-first team. And even despite that, he put up some pretty solid numbers, too. Anyway, it was very exciting to watch Chargers football during the Philip Rivers era, is what I'm trying to get to. And his gunslinging style really led to some of the most entertaining games that I've ever seen. Now, I'll also add that a lot of these stats were definitely made possible by probably the most impressive stat of all when it comes to Philip Rivers' career. In his 16-year career, I think with the Chargers, he may have tacked on a couple more with the Colts as well, right? Philip Rivers in that time never missed a single game. In his entire time as a Charger, he never stepped off the field. That is insane to think about. Very few players in NFL history have been able to pull that off. He was Iron Man out there. And I would say one of his most defining moments of his career was when he refused to step off the field despite a torn ACL during the AFC Championship game versus the Patriots in 2008. That just, wow, right? Like, you could see him limping to the line after breaking the huddle. His toughness, his passion, his determination, it was all very evident in that moment. And it's something that I think I'm going to remember forever. But despite these incredible feats, it seems that Rivers is missing one key component that his 04 classmates both carry, right? And that's Super Bowl status. Hence why this segment's called Stats Despite the Lack of a Ring. That Super Bowl status is very, very important when it comes to the politics of getting into the Hall of Fame. Could this be enough to hold him out? I don't know. Rivers made it or never made it to the big game, which is such a shame. It's gutting to think about as a Chargers fan. And I don't think I blame Rivers for this at all, right? Maybe sometimes, yeah, right? He got a little trigger happy later in the later half of his career. He did throw some game-killing turnovers. Yes, absolutely. He does deserve some blame as well. But in my eyes, it feels like the Chargers as a team, as a unit, really struggled and at times failed to assemble a complete cast around him, especially offensive line. You guys know, as Chargers fans, for years and years and years, we watched this team just really scrape the bottom of the barrel when it came to trying to address the protection for Phillip Rivers. And it really did cost him. There were so many games where maybe a sack or two fewer, or maybe a strip sack fumble, fewer, would have led to a very successful season. And it didn't even stop at the O-line. There was many seasons, bad defenses, a whole bunch of things everywhere. This Chargers 2022 team is way more complete than we've seen for maybe any team for Phillip Rivers in his era, minus maybe the 2006 to 2008 era, right? It was a struggle bus. It was kind of a struggle bus span of years, after the fact for that and Phillip Rivers. And yes, in his time as a Charger, we did see some incredible teams, right? And especially insane players that will live on in Chargers history forever. LaDainian Tomlinson, Gates, Sean Merriman, Nick Hardwick, Vincent Jackson, some of the greatest Bolts of all time shared the field with Phillip Rivers. But there was always that Achilles heel, right? A terrible secondary, a patchworked O-line. But most of all, a slew, and this is probably a pretty big one if you're reminiscing with me as Chargers fans, just a slew of bad luck when it came to the health of our players, particularly our superstars. Outside of number 17, we got hit with that injury bug quite a bit, and it was very detrimental to very many seasons, even before kickoff. That hurt us bad. It felt like every season we lost at least one, if not more, vital pieces to this team. So you bundle this up with the lack of, let's say, quality coaching, right? We went through quite a few coaches, North Turner, McCoy, et cetera. You also bundle this up with terrible ownership. I know a lot of people don't hold the Spanos in high regard. The stiff competition, yes, all of this kind of wrapped up and with a bow on top. It sadly makes sense why Rivers never made it to the big game, which again, I'm gutted for. It's an absolute shame. But I don't believe that the lack of a Super Bowl should be the deciding factor whether or not he's worthy of the Hall of Fame, right? And there are others that have made it into the Hall despite the lack of Super Bowl success as well. And that's where we're going to turn the page here to Dan Marino, right? I should have put this slide in a little sooner. I got a little carried away there. Dan Marino versus Phillip Rivers, right? We're going to take a look at a close comparison here. And this is an argument that I see brought up a lot when discussing Rivers' eligibility into the Hall of Fame. And you know what? In my opinion, it holds water. Okay, Dan Marino is considered to be one of the greatest quarterbacks to have ever lived, even though he had never won a Super Bowl. I myself hold Dan Marino to the highest regards. This guy's a legend in the sport. Never won a Super Bowl, and it's okay. A lot of people share my same opinion. They hold him in very high regard. And of course, this doesn't take anything away from Marino in comparing him to Phillip Rivers. He's a legend. And saying Rivers is similar or even better in some areas does not take anything away from the Marino name. Nobody's going to think about him different, but it's worth looking into. And it's true. When you take a look at the stats, all of it's true. These arguments that I'm seeing brought up in social media, on Facebook and Twitter, the comparisons are quite jarring. So let's take a look ourselves at the comparisons here, starting just with the stats, right? Dan Marino, Phillip Rivers. Here are the numbers. Dan Marino, games played 242 to Phillip Rivers 244. Two more games for Phillip Rivers. You got the completion percentage. Dan Marino 59.4 to Phillip Rivers 64.9. Phillip Rivers beat him out in completion percentage. Yards for Dan Marino 61.3 or 61,361. We'll say the whole number. To Phillip Rivers 63,440. You guys starting to see the picture, see the picture I'm painting here a little bit? Touchdowns 420 for Dan Marino, which is funny. If you look up into his history, there was concerns as to whether or not he was involved in some 420 activities. Didn't happen to be the case, but he ended his career with that number. Very, very good career for Dan Marino. Still, Philip Rivers, 421. Rating of 86.4 to 95.2. The list goes on. Another very, very impressive stat here that kind of goes overlooked by some people is Philip Rivers' interception ratio to Dan Marino's. Philip Rivers threw what, like 40-something less interceptions. Very impressive, with more touchdowns. Philip Rivers got sacked like what, almost twice the amount as Dan Marino, which is also insane to think about. The protection just wasn't there. These numbers, it's insane to me. Rivers, who played just 2 more games than Marino, is statistically better in almost every single category. Yet Dan Marino's in the Hall of Fame, unquestioned Hall of Famer, and Philip Rivers remains to be proven in terms of his eligibility for the Hall of Fame. It kind of blows my mind a little bit. Some will say, in this same argument, I have seen this in social media, some will say that Rivers, had some of the best weapons to ever throw to in his era too. And that is true. He did have some of the best weapons in Chargers history. But Danian Tomlinson and Antonio Gates, definitely the two highlighted. Sure, we had some great receivers as well, like Vincent Jackson, Malcolm Floyd, now Keenan Allen. Pretty good receivers. Keenan Allen might make the Hall, but I'm not quite sure about Vincent Jackson, Malcolm Floyd. Let's be honest. Our Hall of Famers that stood out were a tight end and a running back. They were not wideouts. Gates and LT are legends, but they're not wideouts. The Dolphins, on the other hand, in the Dan Marino era, they had some of the best wide receivers in NFL history. Right? Catching passes for Dan Marino. That's a huge, huge help to his stats. 5-time Pro Bowler Mark Clayton was on that roster. 3-time Pro Bowler Mark Duper was on that roster. Slew of others as well. Very, very good players on that offense for the Dolphins in the 80s. When you put both quarterbacks side by side, it's really easy for me to see that Rivers is more than deserving to make the Hall of Fame when compared to Dan Marino, who is in the Hall of Fame. Yes, Marino made 3 All-Pro teams. He got 9 Pro Bowls under his belt, right? But Rivers falls him very closely behind with 8. He doesn't have the All-Pro team statuses, unfortunately, but he has 8 Pro Bowls. I will say, though, when I was looking at the awards and stuff between Marino and Rivers, Marino's awards do carry more merit than Phillips. I would say not merit, but he just has more that are probably a little bit more impressive. Still, that being said, the stats don't lie. The 8 Pro Bowls don't lie. The evidence is there. And again, Marino's somebody that I hold in high regard. And when you dissect his numbers and his performance, it's crazy how similar they are to Philip Rivers. So why not? Where's this pushback coming from? I know general NFL fans are not as high on Philip Rivers as us Chargers fans, but where's the pushback? Why is Dan Marino in question and Philip Rivers is unproven? It's kind of weird to me. So we're going to move into the next topic right here, called Valiant Leader Unfortunate Closings. This might help us clue in on some of the reasons why the perspective on Philip Rivers seems a little skewed, especially when compared to Dan Marino's. A big reason why I think people are sleeping on Rivers is the unfortunate reality that we just couldn't figure out how to close out games. You guys remember that? So many of them, right? So many of them were within just 1 score. Very, very close games, and it really sucked to see the Chargers fall over and over and over again in these situations. These close games are thrown away by what? Poor defenses? Sometimes late mistakes by Philip Rivers himself, yes. He does have a role to play, maybe some blame to be had in those situations. But a lot of this had to do with bad coaching as well. Unfortunate injuries. Many other factors too outside of Philip Rivers' control. And in the end, Rivers' win column isn't as impressive as his 04 classmates. In his 16 years with the Chargers, Rivers only finished 5 of them with over 10 wins. 5 out of 16. Yes, he had some huge years inserted in there, right? Coming into the league in 2004, he led the Chargers to their first playoff appearance in a decade. That was huge for Chargers fans. In 06, he led the team to their first conference game since 94. He carried us to the postseason 7 times in his career, and every single time, the Bolts just could never make it over the hump. They just couldn't get to the big game. Gutting for number 17. And so many of these came down to last-second collapses. It pains me so much to think about because for the longest time, I felt this team was cursed. It felt as if the Bolts were designed to get my hopes up as high as they could possibly go before crashing back down to earth, right into the dirt, into the mud. And it sucked. It was tough being a Chargers fan, but most of all, I hurt for Phillip Rivers. This guy's a childhood icon. It sucks so bad to see him get so close so many times, but just never make it. Yes, he deserves a little bit of the blame here, right? There are years he got especially trigger happy. I think a lot of people, it's in most recent memory, maybe it left a bad taste in some people's mouths. But we can't let that define him. Just because he got a little trigger happy, late picks destroyed our chances to steal more wins. I do remember those too. But I also have to acknowledge that there's so many more aspects that were out of his control. He played his daggum tail off for this team, and he deserves credit where credit's due. Despite all these setbacks, he never backed down. Through a lack of protection, through poor defensive support, even through a torn ACL, Rivers never gave up, and he put up tremendous stats. And this is why his individual stats speak volumes for his career. His win column is actually shocking. When you take a look at stats that are not representative of the player, that stat in particular is probably the case with Phillip Rivers. His win column is absolutely shocking when you take into account the kind of numbers he put up on the field. Shocking. One of the best to ever play, but never win the big game. This is why I feel so conflicted when discussing this topic. When talking to folks that aren't Chargers fans, it's hard to argue that the Chargers as a team didn't see their struggles even under Phillip Rivers, with Phillip Rivers on the team. But most of the time, it wasn't due to Phillip Rivers himself. It was a team issue, a staff issue, a health issue, a big one there, a health issue. These things cause just so much chaos. And it's really hard to convince fans to put aside these factors to really highlight the player himself. And this begs the question, are the individuals in charge of selecting future Hall of Famers going to be as hard to convince when it comes to Rivers' true legacy, who he is as a player? It's really hard to say how they're going to judge him. But I hope they view his career thoroughly as an individual, not just with what his win column says. Because when you really start dissecting what he did as a player, it's absolutely astounding. So what do I think, right? A lot of people, maybe some people skip to the end of the video just to see, my consensus opinion. Well, I think Rivers should be inducted. I feel that very strongly. As a matter of fact, I'm hopeful that his chances are higher than we all think. I know some people, there's some skepticism among the fans, among the community, just because, Rivers' career was kind of surrounded with all these weird circumstances. But to me, it's hard to imagine a world where a player like Phillip Rivers gets overlooked due to the circumstances revolving around his team. I love the Chargers. I love so many players I've watched over the course of the last 15 years. But there was a solid 10 years or so where it just sucked, right? It sucked a lot to be a Chargers fan as well. I love this team so much. I love Phillip Rivers, but something just kept this team from success for so long, and it was hard to get through those years. But never once did I blame number 17. Sure, I got frustrated at times. He made his share of mistakes, but I knew even at an early age, because I was younger at this point in my life, this guy's one of the biggest reasons that we're in these games at all. One of the biggest reasons why this team is good at all. It's Phillip Rivers. So to help wrap up this video, first I'm going to answer my own question from the top of the video, right? What is my favorite Rivers moment as a Chargers fan? Well, I don't know. Maybe my sense of humor gets the best of me at times, but I will never forget that playoff game versus the Ravens in 2019. That win had a lot of great moments, right, from a lot of players, but Rivers' little fuddy-duddy taking off on foot for the first down play, then standing up while also giving us the most amazing first down signal of all time just felt so Phillip Rivers to me. It encapsulated his personality, his sense of humor. I absolutely loved that moment. It's absolutely burned and ingrained in my brain. This is Phillip Rivers, baby. This dude was cocky. This dude was fun. This dude was a risk taker. And man, was he willing to put on a show for the Chargers fans, reflecting that part of his personality. I loved that about Phillip Rivers. So my bottom line here, guys, and again, please share your favorite memories and moments of Phillip Rivers in the comment section below. The bottom line here for me is perhaps unsurprisingly, yes, Rivers deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, at least from this humble YouTuber's perspective. Alongside the other guys, right? Eli, Ben, other great quarterbacks that have since then retired. Rivers deserves to be on that same list. I know it's hard to look at the situation unbiased. It really is, especially for me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe his performance wasn't enough. Maybe his stats can't carry him to the Hall. But when I take a step back and really look at his legacy, at his performance, at his stats, who he was individually as a player, it's hard for me to imagine even fans outside the Chargers community that these people would think he's not deserving of this honor and recognition. Mainly recognition. Love him or hate him, Rivers was one of the best players to ever play the sport. He wasn't perfect, but this doesn't take away what he accomplished during his time in the league. It's not as clear-cut as I would like, though, and that's the biggest reason why I'm making this video to begin with. It's a debate among general NFL fans. But me personally, especially after looking into it, just remembering and reminiscing and remembering all the great things that made Philip Rivers so fun to watch, I will always stand firm in my opinion that Philip Rivers deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. So what do you guys think in the comment section below? I know there's going to be some debate. This is a sensitive topic for a lot of Chargers fans and any like general NFL fans that come in here despite your fan base. Please let us know your unbiased opinion as well. I think that's something I'm very interested to see, because to a lot of people, Philip Rivers kind of forgotten, but to some, he's definitely remembered and respected as one of the greatest players at his position to play the sport. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Remember, hit us up in the comment section with your favorite Philip Rivers moment, and hit us up with a like and sub on your way out if you did enjoy this Chargers content. We'll see you next time, and as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Doggone it.